Good morning. Good morning. It is 1300 on the East Coast. It's 1700 somewhere in Greenwich, England. Unconformable Coatings, good morning. The Pragmatic Machinist, good morning. Proteum, good morning. Avery, good morning. Brian, good morning. K-Bonk, good morning. Wes and Brian. Got everybody so far. We'll be rolling in. We got the stragglers coming. But it is a stunningly gorgeous day here in the New Hampshire. Seriously, we should be outside. We should be doing this outside. Had a fun shop and a half day and a half of shop work this week, and I'll be reporting on some successes, some failures, and always some learning. And the learning continued right up till this morning when finally I connected with somebody who I've been trying to get on a call with live, and I got a fire hose. Chris says he is doing this outside. Chris, you're awesome. Are you out still with the bow? Are you doing the bow thing? I mean, it's high. It's high noon, so there's nothing. There's no hunting to be had. Hey, Tuck's here. Welcome aboard, Tuck. A man of my latitude. So we'll give it another couple of minutes for people to roll in before we get into the stuff. Chris, your gauges are going to be the most awesome things ever. Oh, you're doing insulation. Awesome. Well, don't let us stop you. Mr. Blodgett, welcome aboard, sir. So you brought supplies with you so that when it's high noon and all the deer are laughing at you, you had something to do. I think that's awesome. And while you're out looking for venison, we're making your gauges. I just want you to keep that in mind. Let's see. So yeah, it's been a pretty awesome week. Much grinding this week. I did a live that I may someday regret. Uh, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Tuck says looking forward to the paper towel trick, paper chip trick. Pa- I know what you mean. Let me grab one more prop, I think, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got something. Hey, Adam's here. Adam. I'm really glad you're here because your name's going to get mentioned, and and stuff that you are good at is going to be discussed. So you can jump in here anytime to smack me in the head, or or tell me I got it right, or both. You can smack me in the head even if I did get it right. So yesterday, I had a fun session in the shop doing some grinding, and that video is posted. Listen, if picking avocados is your chosen field of expertise, who am I to judge? However, I will point out I like avocados. I like them mostly in salsa and on my tacos. I had really good fish tacos. Can you believe in New Hampshire that you could get decent fish tacos? But we have a place up the road, and it's owned by a foodie, and the special of the day was fish tacos, and it was so good. And we had the jalapeno action, and we had some avocados, and it was really yummy. So I did this live yesterday when I was experimenting or continuing my experiments on Chris's gauge parts. So, as you know, or may not know, I'm making these gauges for Chris, and we're making them out of A2 tool steel, and I'm using this as an excuse because I've done two batches of heat treating, and I've learned from each batch. And I'm actually pretty excited about getting to batch number 3, even though we don't need it, because I think I've tuned up the process and I've learned a lot of things. Hey, Warren's here. Welcome, Warren. My state mate. So, yeah, looking forward to getting to stage number 3, batch number 3 on the heat treating. But we've learned some things that work, that are new, and we've learned some things that absolutely don't work, that were idiotic on the operator's part. So we promised today to talk about a couple of things. The super glue trick, the paper towel trick, and mechanical straightening. Each of which gave me grief this week, and each of which I learned from. So I will pass along the wisdom, if any. But before I do that, the contest is still running until midnight tonight. This is the PFG Stones contest, and we will be picking a winner sometime after today. I don't know when I'll get to doing the count, and I want to do a video of the count. But we have 29 entries so far in the contest. And if you're not one of them and you're interested, go to pfg.gg/contest, or alternatively, pfgstones.com/contest, and it will fill you in. So already, Chris is selling his gauges. I think it's awesome. We're having a lot of fun. So that's the contest commercial. If you don't have PFG Stones, you know what to do. Go to pfg.gg. You'll figure out how to buy them. And we have everything in stock. I restocked up to my safety stock levels. So we do have everything in stock. Somebody sent me an email earlier this week that said, if I order 6-inch stones, can I have them in Florida, before November, whatever it was? And I'm like, sure, absolutely. So if he's listening, get your order in. I got your stones sitting right there. You guys take it outside, okay? All right. So I will regale you with my trials and tribulations, but some really excellent discoveries. So yesterday we did this random live. I just fired it up, and some of you kept me company while I was grinding. That's the good news. The bad news is that the video was 4 hours long. In fact, we actually came right up into the limit where Instagram won't let you record anymore. I posted the video. It's on Instagram. I haven't posted it to YouTube. I think I'm going to grab it, do some significant editing, and just shrink it, and then I'll post it to YouTube. But there were a few things there that were pretty interesting. Hey, listen, Warren, I don't care whose fault it is. You and Chris, take it outside. I just, when you're sitting in the auditorium, I just expect you to be, quiet. You guys are out of control. So, the goal... Oh, and also today we're going to be talking about grinding the chuck. As if you thought the last possible word on grinding the magnetic chuck on the grinder has been spoken. Even on this channel, the answer is absolutely not. We have new information, and that is coming. So if you're a grinder guy, don't call me professor. There are many things you can call me, Warren, and get away with it. Professor's not one of them. You can call me master, but that's another story. Anyway, so when we last met our heroes, to review, we took these 6-inch by 1-inch by 1/8 inch thick A2 tool steel blanks, and we hardened them. That's the good news. The bad news is that when they came out of the hardening step, they got all stuck together because they were not. There was no consideration given to any particular way to have them inside of the bag and inside of the heat treating oven. So the bozo operator panicked a little panicked, and kind of peeled these things apart and laid them out on the cooling rack. But by that time, the damage was done. There was some bends and warpage, and it wasn't simple warpage. It was like terrible. So I fired that operator. You can see that these parts are just horrible. And I have put the green tape on them, which means keep only for historical purposes. So these guys are being set aside. However, we learned from our mistakes, and we got batch 2 fired up, and we got some gorgeous results. You'll notice there's no color on these parts, and they came out fantastic. Alexenko, welcome aboard, sir. Nice to see you here. Nice scraping this week. And Schmid Lorenz, I don't know how to pronounce those parts, but welcome aboard. Nice to see you. So these guys came out of heat treat pretty nice. They were measured for any bow, and it was really nice. However, I think the worst ones came in at about 0.008 of an inch or 0.010 of an inch of bow. So at this point, I made the decision to do mechanical straightening. So I set up a jig with an arbor press, and I supported them very close to the ends, and I gave them a press, and I managed to get these guys tuned in to about 1/1000 of an inch. That's their current state. So they've been straightened mechanically. They're in their hardened and tempered state at Rockwell 58. Okay. And they're pretty nice. So I had one of the bars that I tried a few things with, and it was not happy. I tried to do the super glue trick. It went poorly. I ended up grinding the part badly, so I had to basically start over. I ended up with a W in the part. It was a lot of fun. And yesterday's live was mostly me recovering from all those mistakes. But in the recovering, I learned all sorts of stuff. So that brings us to where we are now, in which I've got mechanically straightened parts. So one of the worries that came over me from that experience was, I had time to think about this, and I said, gee, you got this part, and now you're putting stresses in it, you're bending it, and then when you go to grind it, what seemed like happened was you are removing some of those stresses, and now the bending you did is being changed. It's removing some of the work you did. That's how the part behaved. So that was sort of problematic. So I reached out to Robin Renzetti, and I said, can we have a conversation? And the two of us kept on, doing this with the calls. But finally this morning we connected. Hey, Justin, good morning. Henry's here. Welcome aboard, sir. So finally this morning we talked, and my question to Robin was essentially, gee, Robin, am I right in thinking that if I do mechanical straightening and then I go and I do grinding, that I'm removing some of what I did? And the answer was essentially yes, but sort of. So there were a couple of discussions about how the bending goes. I won't get super deep into it. I also reached out to Mr. Grimsmo of Grimsmo Knives, John Grimsmo, and I said, what are you doing for mechanical straightening? I'm not going to get into details of that, but basically they're also doing, in part of their process, they're doing pretty much what I did for mechanical straightening. But they're not doing any significant metal removal after that. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. DSIM, I'm going to call you DSIM from now on. Welcome aboard, sir. So I started getting my head around the mechanical straightening thing. It still scares me a little bit because any significant metal removal after mechanical straightening is going to change the work you did in the mechanical straightening. So I'll just say that, okay? Mechanical straightening has a place. In talking to Robin this morning, when we get on the phone, we start really nerding out. And I realized that the whole topic of mechanical straightening was heading right down a vortex, and it was its own topic. And I'm like, okay, stop, time, let's leave mechanical straightening for another day. And I know that there's whole industries that do that rely on mechanical straightening. Robin brought up body work, and there are people out there that are magnificent at it. But when we're talking about precision parts, especially tools, doing mechanical straightening and then doing metal removal, complicated. So the next thing I did after the mechanical straightening on the part that I worked on yesterday, I refer you to a 4-hour video on Instagram, but we'll fix that, was the paper towel trick. And I know that that some of you are interested in the paper towel trick. Tuck was very excited about the paper towel trick. Before I continue, let me point out that on my YouTube channel, Kinetic Precision NH, on the YouTube channel, there is a playlist called Grinding Videos, in which I will put not only my videos, but more importantly, some other experts' videos that I respect that have things to add to the discussion. I added 1 or 2 videos. I can't remember, but there's a couple of videos I added, but one of them was from Steve Barton over at Solid Rock Machining, and it was his video on doing the paper towel trick and grinding a part into flat. The second video I put in was Adam Demuth's video, which was making, under the thin disguise of making the thin V-block, he gave some really good instruction on the same thing. He did the paper towel trick, then he did the super glue trick, and he credits the super glue trick to Precision Instruments, which I erroneously called Precision Machining, I think, yesterday in that big live. And I want to talk about that. So the paper towel trick. Let's talk about that for a second. You put the part down on the paper towel, you soak it with coolant, and it becomes this cushion that I haven't completely grokked how it works. But it works, and it's about a 90% solution, and that's what I'm quoting. I'm agreeing with, but I'm also quoting Adam. And then you grind. And now the surface you just ground is, again, flat to about 90%. in Adam's video, he then flipped that part onto the chuck, used no magnet, and then used a couple of dots of a cyanoacrylate adhesive. He happened to use one that was a black filled cyanoacrylate. You know, there's a million of them now. And then he hit it with the accelerator, and it held the part nicely. And then he went in with 40 millionths down feeds. The interesting thing about that is, on my semi-automatic mode on my grinder, I could do 50 millionths, but I can't do 40 millionths. I can go into full auto and do the 40 millionths. So K-Bonk says that Keith Fenner's shaft straightening is pure art. Absolutely. So I should probably grab one of Keith's shaft straightening videos. Keith uses localized heat and rapid cooling to put little stresses in a shaft to get a shaft straightened out, and he does a magnificent job of it. I will make the argument that what Keith does and mechanical straightening are closely related, in that he is actually adding a stress to the part to bring it into the shape he wants. And if we went in and then ground that shaft and took away some of the stress that he put into it, it would go back to another shape. But it is useful. Hey, Tuck, if you could find... Oh, his book. Yeah. So Tom Lipton, in one of his books, also explains straightening. I will reread those sections. I didn't remember that, but I have his book. I have his first... I have both his books. So I will reread that. So you go in to do the paper towel trick, and the part is supported with a magnet on the coolant-soaked paper towel, and you grind. So when I did that on the part yesterday, I believe I got some rebound from the mechanical straightening. That was part of the problem. So I ended up switching at that point. I flipped it, and I did what Adam did. I went to the cyanoacrylate trick. So let me tell you about the cyanoacrylate trick. You're taking your part, you're flipping it over on a decent side, and then you're using a cyanoacrylate, hashtag not sponsored, but we'll talk about these guys in a second, and putting a couple of, with the part down on the chuck, okay, you're putting a couple of dots along the side of the part. I would add my wisdom of let it sit for a minute before you kick it, okay, so that the glue can settle and wick in. I think that's part of what the magic was that Adam talked about that came from Precision Instrument. And then you accelerate it, and it held really nicely. So then I ground it. I pulled it off. After that grind, I measured it, and I liked it. It was very nice. So I flipped that over hard on the chuck, and I went to town and I ground it. So I was able to get down to within 1/1000th of bow on the part, and of course, because it was now a hard to the chuck and a grind, I got parallel surfaces. So the sequence of events was paper towel trick, flip it to cyanoacrylate trick, flip it to hard on the chuck. And I liked what I saw. If I was chasing tenths of flatness, I would have done things differently. On the other hand, if I was chasing tenths of flatness, I probably was in a part that wasn't a long, skinny thing. Adam the Machinist says, chamfered parts are helpful for the superglue trick. That makes sense, right? My parts were not chamfered, but it still worked, the shizzle. So this is hashtag not sponsored. I've settled on this brand of cyanoacrylate. Now, I think it's 3M. 3M makes some cyanoacrylates, of course. But this is from the hobby world. This is a U.S. company, veteran owned. It's called Bob Smith Industries. I like the catchy name. And they make some really nice cyanoacrylate products. This is the one that I've been playing with. I have 3 different flavors, maybe only 2, different flavors of Bob Smith's cyanoacrylates. This one is called Maxi Cure. K-Bonk, which ones? Oh, there are wicking cyanoacrylates, right? So let me break this down. If you didn't grow up with cyanoacrylates, when cyanoacrylates hit the market, it was just a regular pure cyanoacrylate adhesive, which was like water. It has the consistency of water. That's the base material. I will welcome aboard Steve and a bunch of numbers, and Sandra with a bunch of numbers. So that you could still buy it. Oh, Nick's here. The party can start. You could still buy the plain Jane water thin cyanoacrylate, and that will wick. Okay. Then the cyanoacrylate market started adding additives. And in my career, I've used several, the most notable of which was 380. I think it was called a 3M 380. Loctite 380. It was a Loctite 380. And that was a toughened cyanoacrylate. Worked great. Actually, I used it in some antenna designs. And so on. So this guy here is also a filled, thickened cyanoacrylate, and I could tell you that yesterday it behaved perfectly. It held fast. I used a razor blade to pop off the attachment to the chuck. It was awesome. So strong recommendation. Available on Amazon. Available at your hobby store. This is Bob Smith Industries Maxi Cure, and they have the whole series of lightly filled and not filled cyanoacrylates. So I don't think there's any magic, except I like the thickened version that goes where I want it to go. So that worked really well for the trick. The parts held beautifully. I'm a believer in that right now. We have not discussed Loctite SF770 primer. You could tell me. I'm not even familiar with it. The chemicals, which are the accelerators, are pretty much all the same thing. Bob Smith has a little 2-ounce pump action accelerator, which I recommend. They also have an aerosol. I'm not a big fan of the aerosols. I bought one of them. As soon as I use it up, I'm not buying aerosols again. But I like the Bob Smith pumps. I have one of those. I don't remember if it's upstairs, downstairs, or whatever. So that's the story on cyanoacrylate. I have more experimenting to do with the technique, but it's a win. So magnet off, part goes down, and you're putting... now, in Adam's video, Adam, you could correct me on this. I think you were promoting putting it down as a smile, not as a frown. I put it down as a frown. It worked great. And I'm not sure. I've been mentally thinking about this. I'm not sure it matters. So I put it down as a frown, hit it with the dots. One thing I did think of is that if you hit it, if you put the cyanoacrylate in the vicinity of where the contact points are. Okay, so Adam's agreeing with me, frown. So if you put it down as a frown and you put your... the smile was for shimming. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha, sir. That makes sense. Okay. And put your attachments in the vicinity of the frown. You're not going to yank on the part. Nick says, it's handy stuff. It makes CA glue work on Teflon, Delrin, Ultem, silicone. Be careful on Ultem. Do not. I have an Ultem story. I just don't like the control. The aerosol is, I don't want to breathe it. And an aerosol is prone to making smaller particles. That's all. Plus, that's all. I think there's more waste with aerosols too. So here's I've told the cyanoacrylate story before, but we were making some parts. Again, it was for an antenna project, and one of my favorite guys was working on the project, and we had parts made outside because things were flying, and we had parts made out of Ultem because this was a project that actually had a heater in it, and it had an RF chamber and all sorts of weird stuff. So he's assembling the thing, and he did what we always do. We always put a little Loctite on these fasteners. So this isn't strictly a cyanoacrylate glue, but it's cyanoacrylate based. So he put a little drop of cyanoacrylate on the screw, and he ran the screw into this Ultem part. At which point, this $35 Ultem part just started crazing, completely crumbled. And poor Tony is looking at this thing going, what just happened? And it was a chemical reaction with the Ultem, between Loctite and the Ultem. And it was like a science fiction movie. So be very careful with that on Ultem, unless there's some wisdom that I don't have. So that's sort of the story on the super glue trick. Very pleased, and will be using it again. The thing I like about it is it does the job, and it does it in a way that's completely understandable. It's like I'm holding this part here so it doesn't move, so you can grind it flat. Totally makes sense. Paper towel trick, I don't, there's things about it I don't completely understand, which is probably why it's a 90% solution. And then finally, we have mechanical straightening, which is just problematic because we're putting stresses in. If we grind the material after that, we're taking stresses out. If it's the last thing you do, if mechanical straightening is the last thing you do, which is what Keith Fenner's shaft straightening is, no problem. Okay? Tucker Raj says he's seen acrylic do a similar dance with Loctite. Was it with Loctite or just cyanoacrylate? Because it was a $35 show. That part was. Now we had extra parts, so it wasn't a problem. So that was the story, and if you're up to it, you can watch that video. I will try to get it up on YouTube so that it can be watched at 200%, and I will also cut out all of the waiting for the grinding. Yeah, Nick, I can't explain it, but it's probably reproducible. I saw it with my own eyes. I should have saved the part. Okay, so whatever. It's chemicals, right? One chemical is as good as another one. So that's the story on yesterday's adventures. Very happy with it. I mean, good results. So now I have 3 parts which are about to go. And unless you guys talk me out of it, my current plan with these 3 parts is to do sort of the same process as yesterday. Paper towel trick, get a decent surface, flip it over, super glue trick, do a grind, flip it over, final grind, and probably final grind to size. So that's the plan for today, and I should have my parts done nicely. Now, one thing I thought about this morning is that when I finish the major face grinds on these things, I'm going to do the edges. I don't think the edges are going to significantly influence the part, but I'm going to kiss the edges, and I'll probably do the ends for cosmetics, and then I got to put a bevel on one of the faces. So that's my current plan. Science, exactly right, Tuck. Speaking of science, first of all, I want you to know that in honor of my conversation with Robin Renzetti, I broke open a bag of Milanos. Now, if you do not know the connection between Milanos and Robin Renzetti, you have some homework to do. You need to go to the Within Tolerance podcast and look up the interview with Robin Renzetti, which gives his whole story, and in which he has something to do with Milanos. And let's see. Yeah, so I won't spoil it for you, but go, if you haven't listened to that interview, it's required listening, and get yourself some Milanos. No joke, I'm a huge Milano fan. Of course it's your daughter's favorite. It's everybody's favorite. What flavor Milanos is your daughter's favorite? That's what I want to know. Are they tasty? They are tasty. This one is double dark chocolate. My wife just picked up chocolate orange, which is one of my absolute favorites. If you haven't tried the chocolate orange Milanos, you have to do that. Wes says, I think Ultem is an acrylic. Quite possible. Okay, so double dark. Roger, double dark is awesome. Okay, we could spend 20 minutes on Milanos. It's your time. If you want to do that, I'm in. I'm going to have a sip of tea while you guys decide which is the best flavor. The tea this morning is an Irish breakfast tea, iced, extra strong. It's delicious. So the other day, I have an iPhone, and my iPhone is set to. Hey, Paul, welcome aboard. My iPhone is set to silence unknown callers. So if you're not in my contacts and you call me, you go right to voicemail. The pragmatic machinist, also known as Chris, the procurer of venison, says CA glue activator will melt a computer keypad. A friend told me so. Meanwhile, Brian Yu is hooked on Sausalitos. So moving on. My iPhone is set to silence unknown callers, so sometimes a call will come in, it'll go right to voicemail. I'll see that it came from some random town, or allegedly from some random town in the United States, and I will delete it and get on with life. And then occasionally the voicemail will have the usual car warranty nonsense, and I will delete it and get on with life. So the other day, yesterday, I got a call, and it was from Pennsylvania, and didn't leave a message. I'm like, ugh. So I delete it. So this morning, I get a call, and it's from the same number in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, light dawns on Marblehead. So I text to Robin, and I said, Robin, did you just call me? And he goes, yes. So I'm like, give me a minute. So I had to put him in contacts so that we finally connected. And, one does not just simply have a chat with Robin. I had my pen and paper out. So the topic here is back to grinding the chuck. And the reason this is worth revisiting is I'm getting messages now from people who are grinding their chuck and having issues. Some of them they've asked me in public on the Instagram. Some of them they have sent me a private message. So I talked to Robin, and at least one of the things that I believed was important, Robin put at the bottom of the list. Said, no, that's not important. Here's what's really important. And then one of the things that I recommended, Robin said, yes, that's pretty much what I do. And then another thing that I recommended, Robin said, that's exactly correct. So I'm going to go over all of these things for you. And the topic here is grinding the mag chuck on the grinder. So I will remind you that the mag chuck is made out of soft materials. It's alternating non-magnetic materials and magnetic materials, and non-magnetic materials and magnetic materials, so that when the magnet is on, be it electromagnetic or mechanical, your field lines are coming out from pole to pole, and that's what intersects your part, and that's what creates a magnetic force. So you may also recall that I was recommending, from my recollection of a Norton publication, stepping over 1/2 the wheel width, which sounds like a lot, to get across your part. My recommendations when we last talked about this was 1/2 wheel width step over, 1/10 downfeed, 2/10 absolute maximum, use of coolant. In the absence of flood coolant, you could use Crisco, which was what I've had success with, or WD-40, which others have had success with. Use of a white wheel, aluminum oxide wheel, 46 I, some people say H, a fast dress on the wheel. Am I missing anything? That's pretty much everything. To quote the message I got yesterday, the gentleman said, I have to grind 5/1000ths of an inch off of this thing, and if I take a 1/10 or 2/10, it's going to take hours. And my answer to him was, yes, it's going to take hours, because that's what you got to do. It takes a long time. So the result of this discussion was as follows. I claimed that one of the big problems in grinding the chuck was wheel loading, in that if your wheel loaded up, it stopped cutting. And typically we start at the back and we come to the front, and you end up with this ski slope rise to the front. Robin disagreed with me. He said he didn't believe that loading was the most likely culprit. He thought that wheel wear was the most likely culprit. What Robin does is he says he steps over a full wheel width for the same reasons. So the half wheel width recommendation is shocking. Robin steps over a full wheel width, allowing, of course, for any edge. Oh, Deflagrate, listen, you don't have to apologize for being late. You do have to put a dollar in the jar, however. So that step over, the big step over, is to get across the chuck quickly and to not wear the wheel, because he thought that wheel wear was the prime culprit. He also thinks, Robin also agrees that coolant is mandatory. And we talked about thermal growth. One of the problems is that thermal growth will cause, as you grind the chuck, will cause you to dig a hole in the middle, because you're making heat when you're grinding. It has nowhere to go from the middle, and so the middle grows. And now you're cutting off the growth, so when everything comes back to temperature, you end up with a shallow. So thermal growth is another source of issues. That's why coolant is mandatory. That's why 1/10 depth of cut is recommended, for those reasons. What else did we talk about? We talked about thermal stability. You know, we talk about taking a 1/10 cut, but a grinder column can grow a tenth without too much temperature change. So his recommendation was, if you're going to be doing something critical, and he considers grinding the chuck critical, that you let your machine warm up and stabilize for half a day, and then you can go. So thermal stability of the machine is important, because over the course of an hour, the machine can easily grow 50 millionths as it warms up. So this is something else that we have to think about. And then we talked a little bit about the fact that the chuck surface characteristics can affect the strength of the magnetic hold down. And we didn't, that was the last topic we talked about before we had a break. But it's not an issue. It just has to be understood that a wavy chuck, right, that is otherwise flat, is going to have less magnetic hold down force than a dead smooth chuck of similar magnetic force. So that was a really good conversation we had this morning. And of course, we talked about mechanical straightening and the paper towel trick and the super glue trick. But I think I've already given you all of that data that was colored by that conversation. So that was pretty cool. So once again, to reiterate the rules, I'm going to I have to write these down in a coherent form. But if you're grinding the chuck, 46 wheel, I is fine, H is fine, J is fine. Fast dress on the wheel, half to full wheel step over. I'd probably say a little less than full step, because you don't want to get to where your corner might be rounded. Coolant always. 1/10 down feed, and allow the machine to stabilize. And then once it cleans up with those rules in place, you should have a chuck that's properly ground. The other thing that we talked about, and Robin emphatically agreed with me on this was my opinion, was that if you're a first-time grinder guy and you go out and you buy yourself your new surface grinder, first of all, congratulations, you're going to have a lot of fun. The first thing you do should not be to grind the chuck, because if you don't have experience grinding the chuck, it's one of the hardest things you get to do. So I actually got this advice, and I don't remember where the advice came from, but the advice was, does the chuck look okay? Yeah, use it. Don't try to grind the chuck. And I can't remember who gave me the sage advice. And I passed that along, okay, which is grind a bunch of parts. Get used to grinding steel. Maybe a little soft steel, but if you could grind some hardened steel, it's not only the funnest thing to grind, it's the easiest thing to grind. After you get your sea legs, then you can start the project of grinding the chuck. You know, you're not going to be making any gauges for the Artemis program right out of the gate, so don't worry about it. Get used to the process before you grind the chuck, and that's my highest and best advice on the surface grinder thing. Okay, I got through my notes. I will remind everybody that we have 29 people entered in the contest for PFG Stones. That ends at midnight tonight. And if you want to get in on it, head over to pfg.gg or pfgstones.com/contest. pfgstones.com/contest or pfg.gg/contest. And you'll learn all about it. I will now take a sip of tea and ask for any questions, topics, concerns, or snide remarks from the crew. Here's a question for you guys. What do I do with these now? So Paul Morley says, random topic. That's why we're here. We picked up a vintage hardness tester yesterday for our makerspace here in Dallas. It's a Clark MC12, and he gives the picture link, which I can't go look at right now. Adam is doing cribbage. Are you doing cribbage right now? Oh, cribbage. This. Cribbage for moving machines. Okay. I'll hang on to it. They're hard. They're 59. Grind them for practice. Make a shop knife. Chris says, I think that this was just an average episode. Not impressed. Yeah, let me see you the 20-point buck you just got, okay? Then we'll talk about impressed. Literature about lapping. I have something to say about that. Bend them straight. Let me tell you, buddy, it's going to require differential equations to figure out how to bend these things straight. Cribbing. Yeah, got it. I like cribbage. So Adam says the machine leveling screws don't dig in. It's very handy. So this machine cribbage will be on my store. So if you need to buy some machine cribbage, I'll figure something out to do. We'll have some fun. Oh, I asked for snide remarks. Chris was just saying that his remark was snide, and therefore it met requirements. It met requirements. It was within tolerance. I can't say that. That's trademark. You guys are out of control. Well, very cool. What do you got going on in the shop today, Adam? Brian, it is my intent to pass on as much of my acquired experience as I can, because that's... Oh, getting back to... So, in that light, right? So, Brian says, passed on experience, a must. And then, simultaneously, Henry says, literature about lapping, question mark. Let me tell you, I went looking for literature on lapping. And I found all sorts of scientific papers from guys that have never had their hands dirty. There was a book on lapping that was really expensive, but I bought it as an ebook. Wes says, weld them into a modern art piece. And I haven't found really good stuff on lapping. I think Ox Tools published on YouTube a bunch of good lapping information. Robin has published stuff on lapping. I'm sure I'm missing a few, but we'll keep an eye out. So let's all do that for the team, and especially for Henry. Let's see if we can't come up with some books, articles, or other literature on lapping. So Paul Morley is looking for documentation on a hardness tester known as a Clark MC12. He says, we think there are some weights that are missing, and it seems like parts for hardness testers are a small fortune. Holy cow. Yeah, the weights are just weights. My machine has, I think, 3 weights in it, and I think they all copy each other. And then as you change the selector knob, it engages or disengages the weights appropriately. So if anybody has any documentation for a Clark MC12, Mike Charlie 12, please let us know so we can get that information to Paul Morley. Nick says he's currently unpotato chipping a titanium plate. Considering paper towel / super glue if I can't get it flat enough on the mill. Thanks as always for the public experimentation. So, what condition, first of all, what size plate is this? If you can give us the dimensions. And you're messing with it on the mill first. And I wonder if it's been heat treated. And it's titanium, so you're not going to do the paper towel trick on a titanium plate because there's no magnetics. You can't suck it down with a magnet, right? I assume that is a non-magnetic material. However, the super glue trick is absolutely perfect for such a material. I'm curious how big it is. I have not done a lot with titanium, and I've certainly not ground it. I will tell you that you're going to be making a lot of heat grinding titanium, so you're going to have coolant. You're going to have to go. So it's about 8 by 10. So that's the size. That's big. Well, Henry, you might have to help by translating the old German books on lapping. How well do magnetic hold downs work? Which ones? Do you mean the little fingery things? Yeah, the things that look like a hair comb. So Robin Renzetti has featured those on some of the videos. I don't use them. They look like fingers. You bring them into the part, you turn on the magnet, and they come down, and they will hold a part down. Apparently, they work really well. I was going to make some, but I never ended up doing that. That might work. Paper towel with the vacuum chuck does not sound like it's going to work, Nick. Yeah, you made those hold downs. I like the idea of the super glue trick for you. So, I don't think you can see it. Oh yeah, you might be able to see it right there. The guys on YouTube can't see it, but right there, I have a what I call the Lapzetti plate, which is a surface plate. It's a cast surface plate with a piece of 220 carbide sandpaper on it. And I would recommend the approach of taking your titanium plate, make a Lapzetti plate, do a quick lap on that, look at the contact points, and then if it's stable, if you have a stable contact points, if you don't, flip it over and do it again. But if you can get the plate stable on the surface plate, I would go right to the chuck, magnet off, do the super glue trick. Just remember that it's the super glue trick seems to be best when it's the contact point is hard on the chuck, and then you're applying the super glue at the corner, as opposed to putting super glue under the part and squishing the super glue. Then you have another variable which you don't need. But that could be a good thing. Now, here's one of the issues with the super glue trick is if you have a part that's loaded with stresses and the act of grinding causes those stresses to relieve, it can generate enough force to pop the super glue off. You did that prior to your current mill setup. You did the fingers on the grinder, or you did the... Please clarify, Nick. Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah, let's... I'm actually interested in hearing how this goes, but strongly recommended. Ironically, a video was just released on YouTube by our friend Stefan Gottswinter, and he did the super glue trick. Yeah, I call it my lap Zeddy plate. Okay, good. That's a good tool to have. Stefan did the super gluing a thin material to a thicker plate for machining, and I've done that. I wonder if I could reach it. Hang on. This was. Oh. So you can see. This was a sacrificial plate. This was aluminum plate, and about a 25 thousandths, 20 thousandths brass plate. In fact, I could feel the super glue on here. Was glued to this, and then we did all the appropriate machining, and that worked spectacularly well. Paul says, I made the finger hold downs. Getting the right spring steel and cutting the fingers in the correct orientation to the grain of the material, so says Robin, was a bit of a challenge. If it was easy, they'd be lined up around the block, right? So again, super glue. This is an instance where you might go with the thin super glue, right, as opposed to the heavily loaded super glue. So now, I bet you think you were only going to have one kind of super glue in your shop. You're going to need some choices. So Stefan showed that trick this week on his YouTube channel. Paul says, it wasn't clear to me if I needed to treat the steel after cutting to get the spring behavior. So you can purchase spring steel, and as long as you can hard cut it, hard mill it, that'll work. So let me show you. Ask and you shall receive. This is spring steel. Allow me to read you my documentation. This is 1074/75 with Rockwell hardness of 54. And unfortunately, I don't have an order number for you, but I wonder if you can guess which supplier this came from. The guys, I'll tell you, the guys on YouTube have an advantage. But this was right out of McMaster-Carr. So this is, guess what I bought this for? I bought this to do exactly what you're doing, but I decided not to. Yeah, Nick says, I bought spring steel bars that looked like that and then water jetted the finger shape. Worked great. Tuck, you are correct. McMaster. Okay. So that is a way to do it. So, these water jets like the Wazer that I see. Oh, we're at the top of the hour. Kind of have the Wanas, but I don't think I need another system in the shop. All right, I'm going to put this away. Actually, I won't put this away. I'll put it away later. We're coming up at the top of the hour here, so I'm going to wrap it up. Brian says, my wife lets me keep my super glue in the fridge. She's nice. I used to have a refrigerator in my office, in my lab upstairs, and that's where I kept it. But I gave that refrigerator to my kiddo for college. So I don't have a refrigerator there, but I have a spare fridge in the basement if I'm really worried about it. I don't think they don't. They say store in a cool, dry place. So as long as you don't get crazy with it, I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, thus ends another magnificent PFG Live. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's always fun. I will continue to pass on the knowledge. I will try to take yesterday's video and condense it down into something that a sane person can actually watch. And those of you who are not sane are welcome to watch all 4 hours of me sitting around. Yeah, Paul says cutting the bend to be about 5/1000ths thick makes it a bit fragile. At least it did on the one I did. So I could see that that is a process that has to get developed, and that's why they're so expensive. Look at the price of these things. Holy guacamole, they are not cheap. And also, you could do it other ways, right? One of the materials you could think about playing with is packing bands. It's sort of the same material. All right, Tuck. Hope you could use some of that information. I might have another random live today. If you're sitting around doing nothing, feel free to join in. But I think I'm going to fire up the grinder, which went through its warm-up cycle. It's sitting there patiently waiting, and I'm going to get these parts going. I'm pretty excited to finish them for Chris. So with that, have an awesome Sunday. Get outside if you have the nice weather we do today, and I'll see you next week. Enjoy, stay safe.